Krishna for the wonderful introduction. Hello everyone, good afternoon and welcome back to the afternoon session of the Korean Literary Festival, Imphal chapter. Thank you Martin, Sumex and the entire team behind this festival. I'm Sapam Sweetie, your moderator for the session titled Reimagining Traditional Stories. With me I have Mr. Sungil Kim all the way from South Korea and our very own Chanu. Please give them a big round of applause. Mr. Sungil Kim is the visionary behind Blood of the Old Kings and its consequent sequels, Blood of the Undying Throne. He is also a recipient of the Excellence Award at the Korean SF Literary Award, yes, in 2018 and 2024. Chanu, best known for her breakthrough debut book, The Tales of Kangli Throne, can be credited for resurrecting old folk myths and legends of Manipur, especially among the younger generations. She's also author of several books, including children literature. I'm extremely pleased to be sitting here among, two emerging voices of the literary realm. So if I make any mistakes, I do hope that the audience can forgive me, and I hope we can have a wonderful session. So first of all, hello.
Hello.
How has, since you are our guest, how has Imphal been treating you?
Oh, I love Imphal. I love the weather, and after Mumbai, I really love the traffic here. And it's much more comfortable than other places in India I've been to. And on the way here, I told one of my hosts that I could live here. Yeah, it's a very nice place. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you. Weather-wise, we are actually at the beginning of spring, and right around the corner we have one of the most colorful festivals of our state coming up. So you have come actually at a very lovely time. We're really happy to have you. So I would like to begin by asking something. This is something that you both as authors might get a lot, and but I also feel like this is where everything else begins. So I would like to begin by asking how did you come up with an unconventional, how did you choose this unconventional path, career path, like being a writer and an author, especially since from my understanding, South Korea as well as Manipuri society, we value tradition and we value traditional career paths. So how did you, when did you decide to become a writer? Well, was it a gradual process, or was it always, one day you wake up and you instantly thought like, I have to be a writer? Was it something like that? What was the inspiration? This is a question for you both.
Okay, should I answer first? Okay. In my case, the beginning incident was when it's going to be a very long life story, so let me cut it short. I always wanted to be a writer. Even the earliest evidence of my aspiration to be a writer is recorded in one of my early childhood journals, and when I was 8. But even then, it had already been a long dream. I began reading at a very early age, and I wanted to write the kinds of stories that I grew up reading. But I only got around to it in my 40s because, well, life happened. I majored in law. I dropped out of school to pursue business, and it was almost a random coincidence that a publisher should sell a very short piece, a vignette, and asked me to expand it into a novel. I don't know why he thought that I was capable of it. I really don't know, but I took the job and I finished it, and that was my debut novel. And years later, it was picked up by American publisher, Tor, and the book that they have there is the result of it. So I think even in my 30s and 20s, I would always, someday I would end up as a writer. At the back of my mind, I think I've always had that. So it's a kind of destiny fulfilled. Yes, but that destiny came as a random coincidence. So life happens that way.
Just as Mr. Kim said, it's also our destiny calling, and I felt it since I was a very young girl. I grew up listening to grandmothers and grandfathers' tales, and that inspired me already. But as we grew up and introduced to literatures, I knew that since I started reading and loving books, I realized that that's actually a path I'm going to choose.
Talking about destiny, I think it's wonderful also to have, someone who believes in us and someone who instills that belief that that kind of strengthens your will, that spark in you. So continuing with that, Mr. Kim, you did mention that you started writing in your 40s, and I understand that this is that you have taken writing as a full-time job, full-time career. Is that so?
Oh yes, I almost fully removed myself from the business side. My wife is taking care of it now, and what I do mostly is to write.
So regarding that, I would also want to know if there are, like any before we get into the details of the books and everything. I would also like to know if there are, specific policies in place from where you come from, maybe government policies where they have a good support system. They have like that encourages creative writers.
There is some, but far from sufficient. I've heard that from my fellow writers in Ireland and Iceland, that they get paid for being a writer. They get paid by the government. They get salaries to write stories. We don't have that in Korea, but we do have some grants and some civilian and government programs, but I have never been able to utilize it. Yeah, I don't think I've ever needed it. As I said, I had my business and I was able to survive while writing because I had my business making money for me, feeding me. But having such a, like in Iceland or Ireland, having such a safety net, should I say, or a strong government support, that has two sides. As I understand it, a lot of Korean literature and some other places too relied a lot on government subsidies. And in the days of military dictatorship in Korea, that meant somebody is choosing where those subsidies are going. And relying too much on government support restricts you politically. So I don't think any government agency is watching me for what I write, but I think not being so heavily dependent on outside support has its merits. But having an impartial source of income, something that does not persecute you or try to censor you politically, if such an entity, such an impartial entity can give out grants or subsidies, then I think that would be a very good way to promote literature.
Thank you. I think we have lots of notes to take from what Mr. Kim said about, accepting or about, support from the government, which is like, two sides of the coin. So it's not always positive. It has, negative. It can have negative results for people. So, Lintor, what would you like to add to that? How are you able to balance and sustain your research and writing? And what do you want to add to what Mr. Kim has said about,
Yeah, just as Mr. Kim said, there's a lot of need for support when it comes to practicing something like art, because it's quite subjective, and we have to deal with a lot of our emotions and the comfort of how we are surviving in our society. So it actually demands a lot of our personal time and our psychological kind of effort, which goes quite unnoticed in this profession. And because most of the other jobs, we are talking about materialistic gain, but when it comes to performing and practicing art, it is much more than that. So I feel like we always need a system that supports and bring out the best of what art can offer, especially if it's literature or any other art forms. There needs a very intense need for kind of support system. So I truly believe
that also brings me to, let's circling back to our team, that also brings me to the team. Let me first begin with Blood of the Old Kings. I've had the opportunity to read it very recently because of this festival, and thank you, Martin, for that. Blood of the Old Kings is a powerful blend of multiple genres, but at the heart of it, it is also I found it quite interesting, because in a world powered by society, like justice, freedom, truth, these things seem very unattainable. So how do you navigate that? Because justice, like we fight for justice even in real time, even in our society. So how do you navigate that in your writing?
I think of justice and freedom not as a result, but as a process. You keep on a process and innately conflict-oriented. Well, one man's justice is another man's injustice. So there is bound to be a conflict, and sometimes that can turn very aggressive or even violent. And in my book, the main conflict is between this empire, who is very much technologically advanced and has taken over the world. And okay, there's this empire, and there are people who fight against it for their country's independence and for their own personal justice. They fight, and we see stories from their points of view, so we root for them. But objectively, we cannot really say whether they are in the right of things. I don't show that directly, but if you read my book and just ruminated on it a little, then the kind of things that my protagonists do in order to fight the empire, they kill, they burn, they abandon their loved ones. They do those things to fight the empire, to get out from under their thumb. So I think we have to, it happens in real life too. I've learned before writing that book, actually what inspired me to write that book is about the history of imperialism in our own world, say that there are some examples that I took from India, there's examples that I took from Africa, and of course my own Korea. We did a lot of one of the national heroes of Korean independence is what if he did that today, he would be branded a terrorist. But to us, he's a hero because his actions, that he threw a bomb and killed a bunch of people, a lot of Japanese generals and officials. If something like that happened today, let's say in Gaza, and some Gazan person threw a bomb at Israeli generals, then he would definitely be branded a terrorist. So history is a process, and how we value the people and the acts that happened in those histories is also a process. So how should I articulate? My English is not all that good, so please bear with me. So what I'm saying is that it depends on the perspective, where you are and how you are evaluating the events and people. So even though I always root for the underdogs, I never take the side of the empire, be they fictional or in real life. But I'm always on the side of the oppressors, in real life, the oppressed, not oppressors, in real life and in fiction. But even when I do that, I have to show them, do things that might appall us from another perspective. So that's how I navigate the fight for justice and freedom. There are ugly things that happen on both sides, but the end result, the goal itself, they say that ends do not justify the means, but they do a little bit, I think. Okay.
I get that while I was reading your book, the characters are ordinary beings navigating extraordinary circumstances, and there's a lot of gray areas, so it's not always black and white, and I see that you have done it very brilliantly in the book, and I really enjoyed it. Like, I found it believable, and I could connect with it, because we are also all results of imperialism. We are also being oppressed right now. We have faced all kinds of oppression, repression, even right now in our state. So coming back to history, Lintho, you write blending oral folk, myths and legends. Do you ever feel the need to be historically correct, or do you consider yourself a revivalist, or has ideas of folk, myths and legends, has it always, do you feel like it has always existed, but hidden, or did you feel when you were writing the book, when you were writing your books, because that's your main thing, did you feel like you were, kind of reviving or bringing it all out in the light again?
I deal with folklore. A lot of my books are inspired by folklore, and when we deal with something like folklore, there is always a question of antiquity. It is itself the main idea of the subject itself. Folklore means antiquity. There is always a synonymous kind of interpretations, but it is actually wrong. When we talk about folklore, we're talking about human experience that have been established for millennia. And it's not just about a community, it's not just about a culture. It's about the whole process of human minds trying to reconnect, trying to connect, and trying to establish, invent, and discover what we are experiencing in this world. So that is what folklore actually is. And whether it's in Manipur, it's in Korea, or wherever, when we're actually dealing with folklore, we're trying to understand how we're going to cope up with our, with our existence. So that is what I actually like that is what I actually look for in folklore. When our grandfathers, when our grandmother tells stories about the monsters, don't we see monsters now? We see it everywhere. So we have, in different forms, but we do see monsters, we do see malicious kind of spirits everywhere. So it is kind of a form of a psychological understanding when we look that deep into the stories. But I'm not saying that we are going to be all philosophical on that, but still there is this understanding of how we are going to connect. So I think that's what story basically do. So I think that's the inspiration.
Yeah, evil has just been, like they've just transfigured and they've just become something new entirely, while we are on the topic of folklore and myth and legends, while I was reading Blood of the Old Kings, I did expect some snippets, some remnants of Korean mythology, because we come from a generation who grew up watching Arirang and who grew up watching a lot of Korean dramas, and we would watch a lot of we did watch a lot of fantasy films and everything. So I did expect some, but there is none. But leaving that aside, I also noticed that you have used Eastern and Western philosophies, Eastern and Western tropes very, and it's all like an idea of one world where the weak are oppressed, and there's one single power who's taking over the world. So, did you write this for a particular, or did you have a particular audience in mind, or how was it? I mean, what was your intention and motivation behind your book?
As for the audience I had in mind, I really didn't have the wherewithal to consider who was going to read this book, or if anyone was going to read this book. I was just busy writing the words on the pages. I was a first-time writer, and I had to fill this whole book, and that was more than anything that I was writing. But as for my motivations, I've always been interested in, as I said, imperialism and colonialism. And by the time I was beginning to write that book, I've already had a whole system of patterns in my mind of how the world has worked and is working. And I wanted to show that, how I understood the world, and how I understood the world is the realistic part of my book, and how I hope to change it is the fantastical part of my book. It's a fantasy book. It's a fantasy work of the Western tradition mostly, as our moderator mentioned. It doesn't have any Korean mythological elements. That is partially because mythology in Korea is kind of dead. It has been dead for several centuries. It doesn't really affect us very much because usually mythologies come through stories and a long-standing culture, especially religion. But we've lost our religion very long time ago. The last dynasty, its ruling ideology was Neo-Confucianism, and it wanted to do away with anything they thought was superstitious. So a lot of our own traditional stories got pushed out to the margins, so much so that, when we were modernizing, also those are pushed to even further margins because they were no longer rational. And so they don't really affect us very much. Our old stories, it still come up. So, for instance, Koreans are supposed to be this descendant of a bear who turned into a human woman by sitting in a cave eating garlic for 100 days. So yeah, we are descendants of bears. We all know that story, but that doesn't really affect us in any way. So I didn't really see much in the way of mythology when I was writing my book, but what I wanted to put there was the long-standing idea of what we considered was just, and the pursuit of justice and pursuit of what's right. The idea of it, the principle that anyone would understand, that nobody should be, this is a word that is famously hard to translate in English, 억울하다. Kapesa, could you translate 억울하다? Huh? To feel wronged. Yeah, to feel wronged socially and politically. That's often the word for. I wanted to put that feeling in there, and this 억울하다, this is something that has to be avenged. This is something that cannot stand in the Korean mentality. Even in our traditional stories, even ghosts come to the local magistrates to clear them of their 억울, the feeling of being wronged. So that is the prevailing feeling in that book. You are wrong, and this cannot stand. And somebody has to avenge you. Somebody has to make it right. And that person sometimes has to be you. That's what happens in the book for all three characters. So while I am not drawing from mythology, I'm drawing from something that would in other places come from those mythologies. The kind of cultural feeling of what's right and wrong. Does that answer?
While we are on the topic of mythologies, Lintoy, do you agree? Because your work relies so heavily on, myths and legends. So, do you kind of agree when Mr. Kim said, could you relate? Because he said something like in their current society they find mythology it's not believable anymore. So in Korea, so how does that work out for us? I mean, what do you feel? Do you have anything to add to that?
I don't think there is a contest in whether we should believe mythology or not.
Not a contest,
Yeah,
but I would like to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. So the historical conditions of South Korea and the historical context of Manipur is totally different. But what can be united here is that the sense of culture is still present. It's very much the terms that Mr. Kim had explained to us. It's only Korean and only Korean that we held, despite the cultural changes, despite the historical changes and all these religious changes. Also, it still sticks. That core value. I think that is what is being harnessed in my work also, the folklore. I'm not trying to bring out the old, in folklore itself, a huge part of it, a chunk of it, is superstitions. When we term it superstition, it goes to the negative connotations, but still we are trying to salvage the cultural values that our folklore is trying to teach. That is what we did in our stories. So I think that is where we have a clear common ground. And other than that, the historical context, whether we agreed or not, is totally different.
If I may interject, the phrase you used, core value of a culture. I think yes, that is the important term here. I think she derives that from her folklore, and I get it from something more abstract. I think But I think that's the important part of fantasy, especially the kinds of fantasy that we write. The stressing those core values. I think that is what's important, and that is what gives our stories strength.
While I was reading Blood of the Old Kings, I could also relate so much to the characters because they are innately human and they have flaws. They are extremely flawed and they are innately human. I'm reading not about superheroes, not with superheroes with superpowers. I'm reading about a woman who is trying to avenge the murder of a family. Someone who is a character who is looking for revenge, who's searching for truth, and another character who is looking for freedom. So I could connect with all of the characters because of their humaneness and their the innate values of being flawed human being. They are not perfect. That's what I wanted to say. So coming back to Lintoi, as a translator myself, I am a freelance translator. I do it out of passion, but not. I'm not trained, but I do it out of passion. I wanted to know, what was the hardest part of translating, something that existed orally into written form. And we are also writing. Incidentally, today is also International Mother Language Day. And you are also writing in a language which is not your mother tongue. So what was the hardest part about translating something which existed orally into putting that into the written form?
Thank you so much. That's a very intense question. Because to deal with folklore, obviously, my main source is oral. Everything is oral. There is not much of a if it's there, it's a secondary source. So I think in the previous sessions also discussed a bit on translations and getting lost in translations. Obviously, when oral story is being translated into text, obviously a lot of essence is being lost, which cannot be compromised. And as an author, what I did was trying my best to retain it, but I don't think I have done like 100% of the justice to just put everything into my text. But the safe part in my journey is that I do not retell stories. I have never retold any stories. What I have done is get inspired from the oral stories and have a rendition of my own. I try to create a story and I try to introduce my own characters. I try to bring in my own personality. Even when dealing with our age-old gods, they're not gods to me. They are just human beings with full of flaws, full of stories, traumas even. And I find a bit of relief in humanizing all the subjects of our folklore to understand that establish relationship with the author, with my readers, and also as an art practitioner, trying to navigate my own psychological kind of beliefs and learnings and knowledge. I think that is where I use folklore. So I think I'm safe to say that I've not done the part where I'm trying to enforce translation.
So, I think we have to give a lot of. I feel like I want to give Lintoi a lot of credit, for reviving, the thrill and the enthusiasm to, to discover our oral literature. So I think she is also solely responsible for that, especially among the younger readers. So you did touch upon I wanted to ask a question about humanizing, especially in your book Vayal Kati, which literally translates into the Caesar of justice. So I also wanted to touch upon the fact that your characters, the way you wrote them, the gods, the deities, the guardians, they have this. You have humanized them. Yes, you have humanized them. And do you also feel like did you also want to imply that, as human beings, as mortals in this world, we sometimes have to, knock into the divinity that exists within us humans? That do you think that there is divine within us? And do you also feel that, when you make these deities, these guardians and gods, demigods, when you make them human, do you feel like it connects more?
So, thank you again. like when questions are asked like this, I feel deeply, like it's so worth it to write a book when it's so deeply read and being asked about my personal opinions, which I thought was not that relevant. So when we're trying to understand, like when we are facing hardships, especially when life is all good and merry, we don't remember divinity much. But when we're dealing with intense kind of emotions, when we're like the reality itself is really tough, and in Manipur there is a lot of instances where our reality is not that comfortable. So when it comes to that, I think a lot of our people's understanding of spiritualities and gods and religions all come with that kind of depth. We are trying to understand our existence. So in the book, even though they are human, they still look up to something like a spiritual alignment, which I think I do. Like, it's a very personal thing to say, but still, I believe in all these signs and callings and wishful thinking. And I think that is also scientifically something called the Pygmalion effect. Like the wishful thinking, we go in circle, we're going to get something and it comes to us because we're always thinking about it. It's a recurrence, psychologically we're set to do that. So something like that. So I think that's how it's reflected in the stories, even though it's fantasy.
That's a really beautiful answer. Coming back to Mr. Kim, I think one particular, let's not say character, one particular thing that I couldn't get out of my head is Kane's obsession with his spectacles, with his glasses. I also feel like you were using the glasses as a metaphor for his disillusionment. I felt it that way. I don't know, maybe. What would you like to, comment on that?
His glasses,
Yeah.
his spectacles.
Because he's constantly obsessed with it. Have I lost it? Has it broken? Is it still in my pockets? Even when he was, even in intense scenes. That's what really stuck in my mind.
He prides himself on his perception, but without his spectacles, he's almost blind without spectacles. He got it from helping a lens maker when her daughter was kidnapped by a local gang. So it's a souvenir of his good deed to the community. And it is also an essential part of his being. But you said disillusionment. Could you be a little bit specific?
Kane is always, while I was reading the book, okay, you have these three different characters, and Kane, among them all, like, he's also constantly battling with his thoughts, he's on a mission and he's constantly battling his thoughts, like, am I doing the right thing? He's constantly asking himself questions, but I feel like, while I was reading it, I also felt like he doesn't know his, of course his purpose is, finding out the truth, but in the process, I feel like he also gets lost, whatever that he's doing is, whether it's right or wrong, and it's all a very gray area.
Yes, yes. The spectacles is a as a metaphor. I have never really thought about
Oh,
it.
is it?
Yes.
Because while I was reading, I was completely obsessed because as a person who wears glasses, I really cannot see without my glasses, and I feel like when I don't see properly with my glasses, I also cannot think clearly.
Okay, I'll be honest.
That's how I.
The
that's
reason
how I
King
read it.
wears spectacles and he's so obsessed with it is because I had excellent eyesight until I turned 40. I didn't wear glasses, I didn't wear lenses. I could spot a sparrow like 200 yards away. I could read without any problem. Then my eyes got old and I started carrying my spectacles to reading glasses. So I think that's reflected there. So, because I wasn't comfortable with having glasses on my face or having to carry it around without losing it. So that's why Kane is so obsessed with his glasses. Because I was obsessed with my glasses.
I am obsessed with my glasses too. So that really, that particular, his the glasses, it really stuck with me, and I really, I thought, that would become some kind of that you would explore that area a little bit, but then again, yeah.
But I think I understand what you mean. He visits with it and he's worried that he might break it,
Yeah.
and he's worried that he might lose it. And that kind of serves to emphasize his anxiety about what he's doing, what he is actually. He's from the same country as the other two characters, but he lives in the imperial capital, away from his countrymen, and he consults with the imperial heartlanders and his other immigrants.
Yes.
So he has his own community there, far from home. So he also always has this identity crisis.
Yes.
I'm not sure if that shows too
Yes,
much.
it shows, it does,
Yes.
yes. I think that was also what I was trying to point out, but I didn't have the correct vocabulary maybe. But
Okay, so he's from a country called Ireland, and he lives in this imperial capital which has conquered the world, including his home. And he's a refuge, because in Ireland there was a political purge that got his parents murdered, and he had to escape his own homeland to the heart of the empire. It actually happened in Korea too. A lot of independence activists actually went to Tokyo to avoid persecution. Anyway, so yes, the glasses. Now that you say it, now that I hear you say it, I think it emphasizes his anxiety and his crisis of identity.
While we are in the middle of it, I would also ask the audience if they have any particular question that they want to put right now, or okay, please make it short and crisp.
Hello, yeah. So I'll ask this question about when you write your stories, right? Either it be folklore or creating fantastical realms. Do you find your works being portrayed as an allegorical work to represent something? And what is your take with is it do you feel it's forceful, or has it been really truly been an allegorical work across your work? All the titles that you read. That is a common question for both of you.
Well, everything can be read as allegorical, but when I write, I don't think about those things. But I don't hate it when people read it that way, because everything stems from reality, even fantasies. As I said, I use my previous knowledge of the world history in my completely fantastical book. So if my experiences and knowledges affect even a little of these fantastical stories, then anyone could find out that connection and read them as an allegory. So I don't hate that. I welcome that. I welcome any kind of interpretation. But I don't write that way. I am focused on what I'm writing. I am focused on that world. Before I begin writing, I might think about other things. But when I begin writing, it's the story of that world and it's the story of those characters.
I think the answer is quite similar with Ms. Kim. We don't think that much into like the allegorical presentations. I think that it is like a book itself is like the instance is 50-50, 50% from the author and 50% from the readers, and the interpretations. So the interpretations of the readers are totally valid, but there could be differences. And a lot of my writing, personally for me, goes to show a lot of like the creative impulse and not that into the political or the metaphorical part of storytelling, but it does imply sometimes, yeah.
Does that answer your question? Alright, circling back to our session. That was something I wanted to touch upon in my next question, but I'll reframe it. I mean, like, there's something, like, I want to add something. As a student of literature myself, and as a lover of books, if any one of you, I think most of us have read George Orwell's 1984, and books like The Handmaid's Tale, I think, by Margaret Atwood. The theme that 1984 is like, the themes that were explored in 1984 is the reality that we live in right now. So that's how I feel. And it's not different from the reality that we now face. So in Wild Kati, you deal with ancient magic. In Blood of the Old Kings, you deal with a dystopian world where the city, the country, the land is powered by dead sorcerers. Do you think it could be a possibility for the future? I mean, do you think like this could be this could potentially become a reality for us, because with the advent of AI and technological advancement,
Okay. Okay.
I hope I'm not boring.
No.
The questions.
Okay. I just didn't know if the question was complete. Okay. As for the empire, just for background, there are sorcerers in this world, and they are born sorcerers. And before the empire came, they would each learn their magic and practice their magic. But the empire forbids that. And what they do with sorcerers is this: they ship them to an academy, put them there, and wait till they die. And they mummify them and use them as batteries. That's their magic. That's their technological power that allows them to rule the world. So they're taking the personal from what is magical and making it industrial and military, of course. So that's the background, and I think it's what is already happening, and it is what has always been. The powerful always use individuals without their individuality and use us for their own purposes. That has been the way. You could also think about it this way. Culture comes from dead people, the people who came before us. Civilization comes from dead people. And the way that we power ourselves, our civilization, we use oil and coal. They are all dead things. And we eat dead things. So we don't owe a lot to dead things. We are dead things. So yes, it is not a possibility. It is what is already happening in one way or another.
Quite a perspective. Let's move on to lighter things, since we have been discussing the technicalities of the books, technicalities of writing. Let's move on to lighter things. I would also want to know if this is something that I want to ask, especially for aspiring writers in the crowd, in the audience. I want to ask this question for them. Like, how do you as a writer, how do you ground yourself and find time to write? What is your writing process like? So that's what I want to know. Lintho, you go first.
So, I started writing very young, which is I published 7 books some 10 years ago. But the thing is, since I mature with time, there is a different kind of priorities coming up, and as of now, since I'm doing my research, like PhD, it's completely out of my way to do anything creative, and I'm quite frustrated for that also. But since writing is kind of also a food for soul, I do not just totally give it up, and I'm trying my best to find time. So as like in my current situation, what I was doing is that when I'm not overloaded with other academic works, I'm trying my best to get at least an hour of myself to think and eat. For me, food is really important, and when I eat something, I get this new ideas. So I have to find some time to eat alone and enjoy the food, so that I have some creative thought in my head, at least in my head, even though I'm not writing. And if I have more time, I try my best to write it down. So that is the practice. I think a lot of other writers and aspiring writers also have some kind of hobby they enjoy, which make their creative juice flow. So I think we should always force ourselves, if you have to, force yourself to enjoy some time alone or with your friends, whoever, so that you can think and try to exercise our creativity, all this practice.
So I would like to hear the same. I would like to put the same question to Mr. Kim.
Yes, my writing process is when I first look for things to write, and whatever I do when my mind is even a little bit idle, when I'm eating or while I'm working out or while I'm driving, then a lot of ideas come into my mind, and when I find something promising, I write them down. After that, what I do is I try to write a certain amount of words, characters in Korean, every day. And I usually plan it out. Okay, so this is going to be usually 30 to 40 chapter. My book is usually 30 to 40 chapters. So I try to write a chapter every day. And the quality of writing at that point doesn't really matter, because I'm going to go back and rewrite anyway. The most important thing is that I finish it. Then I can revise it. So that's the first thing. That's what I do. I don't I put aside everything else until I can feed that, until I can make that number of characters that I have to write that day. So so that's how that's how I write. So usually it takes about a month or a month and a half to finish a first draft, but to be able to begin to write that fast, I have to have some good idea, some developed ideas beforehand, and that's something I enjoy very much. I have to think about the themes, the characters, and all those things, and make random notes. But those are random notes. I don't really structure my writing. And when I begin to write, everything starts to take form. So, yeah, that's how I write.
From what Lin Toy said, I think from what I can take away from Lin Toy, solitude is her best friend, right? And from what Mr. Kim has said, he seems to be very methodical and meticulous in his approach. I would like to open the floor to questions from the audience. Okay, we have time for just one question. So the sun is on our faces, the wind is fluttering, the pages are fluttering. I think we can end the session. So before we end the session, like I would just one final question, what is the one thing that you can take away from a literary festival like this one? And you have been traveling to several literary festivals, and Lin Toy, I believe, has attended some. What is the one thing that you can take away from literary festivals like this? Yeah, please.
I like meeting friendly people, and I like those people talking about my books. That's always flattering, but in this way, without this festival, I would never have come to Imphal. I might never have even heard of this place. But thanks to the literary festival, the festival allowed me to come to this place and eat its food, meet its people, and learn how beautiful this place is. And that is something that other kinds of interactions can't offer me. So I'll probably take every chance at any literary festival from now on.
Same goes for me. Because of the festival, I get to meet a lot of wonderful authors, and even sharing a panel is such a honor. And as for festival goes, we have and this is quite intimate, and I love intimate sessions like this anywhere, particularly. So it's really great to talk about books and also our writing, and that's the best part of any festival.
I forgot one question. This is what I wanted to ask this. Are you both working on any new books currently? Can we expect, since I expected this question from the audience, but since the audience is not asking, let me put this question out.
Right now, right at this moment, I am in the process of editing 3 books. Yeah, so right now I'm not doing any new projects, but I will soon think of something.
Like I said, my creative journey is being so stale right now, but one project is on the way.
Best wishes to both of you. I thank you for your time. I hope the audience enjoyed the session as much as I did. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Sweetie Sapam, for engaging us with this wonderful conversation. We thank you, Mr. Kim, and as you remain standing, we want to give you a token of appreciation and love from the organizing committee. Mr. Kim, I think you need to come back to Manipur to promote your future books as well. Yes. Yes. We look forward to reading Ms. Lin Thoi's new book as well. Thank you so much for being a part of this wonderful conversation.